Aging, Now What? I'm your co-host, Jessica Branning, with ClinCloud Clinical Trials with my partner in crime.
Hi, I'm Ignacio Quinones, president of North Star Senior Advisors. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Today we have a great segment planned. We're going to learn all about Ignacio and his company, North Star Senior Advisors and North Star Cares. So let's kick it off by tell us more about yourself, Ignacio.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. So really quick about me. For me, Army veteran. I was in the service for 8 years. Finished off that career as a nurse. So I got my nursing in the military. It was a pretty exciting experience to learn all the fun stuff as a clinician through the service. It's a little different, but that was fun. Also, a little bit about me. I'm certified dementia practitioner, married, 3 boys. As a matter of fact, my wife and I started North Star together.
It's amazing.
So it's a family business.
I love it. I love it.
She actually founded the company back in 2015. She got it kicked off, got things going, and I joined forces with her to kind of help take it to the next level, if you would, here in Central Florida. And I think we've been able to do that and help countless families.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So tell us more about the company.
So again, founded in 2015, she kicked it off and we got things going. We brought on care management as an extension of our service. So let me first start by saying what North Star at its core does.
Yeah.
So what we do is primarily senior placement. So what that is helping seniors and families locate the next step in senior living. So for example, if they're home alone, dementia has progressed, they need a certain level of care and home is no longer an option, potentially assisted living or memory care community would be the next step. So what we do is we focus in that transitional process with the family or the senior themselves. Our services are complementary when it comes to senior placement. Again, we can help place in independent living sometimes. It's not as common, to be honest with you, but we can do that, independent living. We also do primarily assisted living, that's pretty common, and then of course memory care communities for those that have advanced dementia and Alzheimer's.
That's perfect. That's amazing. I love that. And that sparks so many questions that I have. I mean, especially because, as you know, I work with seniors day in and day out with the work that we do. So a lot of the key questions that people always ask is, can seniors and families do this alone? I mean, or is it better for them to go to a service like yours?
Yeah, great question. So the best analogy I can give to that specific question is, if you're in the market to buy a home, can you technically buy a home on your own? The answer is technically yes. You can drive all around town with your criteria, your budget, your checklist on amenities, and check out countless homes and hoping you find the one that you're looking for. Or you can reach out to a real estate agent that's going to guide you on specifically what it is that you're looking for, what you can afford, and they can help narrow those options down. So that's kind of like the best analogy I can give. So working with an advisor, we're going to simplify that process with the family or the senior themselves to help find the options that are most appropriate for them within their budget, geography, level of care, all those things.
Excellent, excellent. So what are the benefits of working with a senior advisor?
So working with a senior advisor, especially, is going to be that connection. The advisor is going to start working with the family from the beginning all the way to the end. So what that means is that advisor is going to get to know their very specific needs. So yes, there's a criteria when it comes to senior living, but we go above and beyond in understanding what their needs are besides the basics. So for example, yes, budget is important because it's primarily privately paid, okay? Geography, it's important as well, but we also want to know the culture of the individual. What did they do in the past? What did they enjoy? We try to match the culture with the community on what activities they do and things like that, so there's a higher connection. And then also, something very important to note is that there is a huge clinical element to all of this. Okay, so when you're talking about assisted living, memory care, these are licensed by the state. They provide care. They have clinical staff potentially. So the needs of the individual from a clinical perspective coming in and in the future, what those needs may be, are absolutely critical to be known so we can, as best as possible, perform what we call an appropriate placement. And they can age in place.
That's amazing. So I guess a lot of that too, it's a family experience as well. I can only imagine. So you have to probably talk to their loved ones to learn more about that too. Is that challenging at all, trying to get everybody on board? I mean, what are some of the challenges with the process? Because it does seem like a daunting experience if somebody's has never done this before.
Yeah, it can be daunting, and honestly, a lot of times is a little bit of a shock, or it has been, I hate to say, a little bit of procrastination, potentially a little bit denial of what needed to be done, right? And it's understandable. You know, all of us would want to stay home as long as possible. So when that happens, yes, there's a lot of dynamics, a lot of emotion, to be honest with you. And so when there's multiple family members, they may be torn on what needs to be done. So our job is to understand that it's a very emotional time, provide the education, the guidance, resources, even if placement needs to be put on hold for whatever reason, we want to be able to connect them with resources in the community and make sure that at least the individual is safe and they're getting what they need until the time arises again. But yeah, so it's very important for them, for us, I should say, to understand the dynamic.
And you mentioned this earlier, but that all of the assisted living facilities, they have to be regulated and licensed in Florida, right? So does that go into memory care, independent living too, or just the assisted living?
So the independent living communities technically do not have to be licensed. It's a different type of, it's like alcohol and beverage, type of licensure, if you would. There's no licensing from a clinical or ACA perspective because they're not providing any care. That's if they're true independent living, okay? But if you're talking assisted living and memory care, yes. There's 4 license types in Florida, which I think we dive into in a different podcast. And so it's important to know that clinical element, that regulation is of foremost importance because they can all provide different levels of care, if you would, to some degree. So we only work with licensed communities. So in order for any entity to accommodate more than 2 seniors in an environment, they have to be licensed. That's regulated by the state.
Got it. And I meant to ask this earlier, but we were talking about, transitioning and that whole process being daunting for somebody who might be in denial, family members that might be in denial. What are some of the steps would you advise to our audience on being proactive? What would you advise them to do so that they're not waiting until the last minute and there is procrastination? It's like, we got to get mom in tomorrow because it's a safety issue. What are some things you would recommend?
Excellent question. So I would say education is key, timing is key. We do a lot of community education and resources. Example, the alliance that we formed is a good example. So we always encourage families to educate themselves, understand the processes, and if anything else, give us a call. Again, we're complimentary. There's no pressure. We move on anybody's timeline. So if anything, if we get a consultation in, the family or the individual will get to know what helps pay for assisted living, average costs, steps, criteria, and then they take that information and then at least they understand it and know, and then they can think about things, or if it's something they need to apply for, they can get that going. So advice would be education is key. Empower yourself with education, take advantage of the free resources, and then make a transition when it's time for you.
Great. And you talked a lot about costs because, that's something that is going to be a part of this process. So what is the average cost? Are there other outlets for people to get some of this covered at all? What does that look like? So
the costs for senior living have gone up. Unfortunately. So part of the rationale behind that has been COVID didn't help, to be honest with you. So maintaining staff for some of these places has gotten more expensive. So the cost of labor, cost of food, cost to operate, so that all translates into a higher cost overall for everybody. So specifically to assisted living, the average cost is about $3,500 or so a month. Now we're talking assisted living room and board. Understanding that in an assisted living, for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, care is not included in the cost. So when I say $3,500 for like a private room, for example, if there's care needs, which most likely there will be, that will be an additional cost. We do work with various entities, different companies, or assisted livings, I should say, that have a wide range in pricing. So we can do our best to find something a little bit more affordable, especially if there's a lot of care needs. And also understand that typically in this industry, there's going to be a yearly increase. I can tell you that, again, through COVID, they have held off on increasing rates year over year.
That's nice.
It's nice, but going into 2023, I'm hearing from a lot of places they will assess an annual increase anywhere from 2 to 8%. So that's significant too. Memory care, if we're talking dementia, Alzheimer's, the average cost for that is going to be about $4,200-$4,400 starting out. The difference in memory care is that typically it is all-inclusive in care, which is nice.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
Again, we can try to find something a little bit more affordable than that average price, but to be honest with you, there is not a whole lot of wiggle room. And the reason behind that is because there's such a high level of care in caring for those with dementia and Alzheimer's, more so than assisted living, as you can imagine. But it goes up from there. I mean, there's communities that can go as high as $6,000, $7,000 a month. And that's going to be a combination of amenities. Obviously, the newer, nicer communities are going to be a little bit more expensive. So, we focus on presenting options that are going to match specifically what the families are looking for.
Perfect. And what will help pay for some of those costs? I know there was a little bit of a mention of some programs people can think of. And again, I guess the sooner you plan, the sooner you can look into those programs, because it is costly, as you have to transition.
Yeah, so there's literally three things that'll help pay for assisted living or memory care. Number one is if the individual or the family have a long-term care insurance policy. Those are pretty rare, to be honest with you. But if it's there, it can be tapped into. And I've seen reimbursement rates average anywhere from $50 a day as high as almost $400 a day, which is insane. Wow. I mean, it's a lot of money. So that, depending on the policy itself, can either pay partially for the cost of care and assisted living or cover the entire cost, to be honest with you. So that's number one. Number two, there's a veteran benefit. It's called the Aid and Attendance Pension, and it's specifically for wartime veterans that have served in the past. The VA has a very specific criteria in terms of dates, wars. They didn't have to be active duty. They had to be active duty, but not boots on the ground.
Okay.
Meaning they didn't have to be in direct combat, but they had to be active duty. Spouses and widows can sometimes also tap into that benefit. Okay. So that's through the VA. Okay. And how much the VA will contribute, it's based on their own formulas, so we really don't know until they go through the VA. And the last thing is a state program. We're here in Florida, so it's called the Florida Medicaid Long-Term Diversion Program. So it's something that has to be applied for. It is not your traditional Medicaid. So you know how people have Medicare, Medicaid? This is different. This is a state-funded program, and honestly, it's a low-income program for seniors. So there's definitely a criteria. They look at assets, income, things like that, but that can be applied for. And if accepted, it can cover some of the cost for assisted living and memory care. From what we know today, it's up to maybe $1,400 a month. Okay. So if you take an example of a $4,000 assisted living, you subtract the $1,400, the balance would have to be paid by the senior or the family still. There is not one thing that'll help pay the entire cost of senior living unless it's a really awesome long-term care insurance policy.
And those aren't as common.
They're very rare.
Yeah.
Very rare.
And, for the audience here starting to plan and be proactive about this, how long, if they wanted to apply for these programs, should they start applying?
Yeah, good question. So the Medicaid, they can start applying at any time. Okay. So if they're at home and they think that's a potential need, you got to go on ASAP because there is a wait list. Okay. It's a significant wait list for Medicaid, and then also the wait list is not just on income and everything else, it's also on care needs. So they kind of triage that need. So what that means is if you're at home and you're still pretty independent, you're going to be more at the bottom of the list in terms of somebody that just needs a lot of care and assistance. So that individual will be placing higher on the list. Got it. So get it going quickly. The VA, it's a little different, but some similarities there. So advice is to get it going as quickly as possible. I know the VA's turnaround time, I've heard anywhere from 4 to 6 months. Okay. Medicaid, I've heard 4 months, a year plus. It really depends on the individual and their needs.
Great. All good information. And you also mentioned, too, that you have another component to North Star Senior Advisors, which is North Star Cares.
Yes.
Yes. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So right before COVID, we decided to get going on doing care management. So care management can be pretty wide-ranging. A lot of folks really don't understand the value behind a care manager because it is so wide-ranging on what a care manager can do. The best way I can describe it is think of it as a high-level liaison that can work with a family member, power of attorney, son, daughter, whoever, a spouse even, to help coordinate and facilitate different needs from a clinical perspective, non-clinical sometimes. Best example I can give is if a son or daughter is out of town, meaning not locally, but the parent is, they can deploy a care manager to really look at mom or dad's needs at home, coordinate with the PCP, coordinate services, make sure that they're getting their appointments, medications, things like that. That is privately paid.
Okay.
So what we typically do in those scenarios is we do an all-inclusive consultation to find out the dynamic of the situation. The care manager will formulate a care plan.
Okay.
And in that care plan, the family or the POA, whoever it may be, has the option to take that care plan, execute it, or they can retain the care manager to help execute that care plan.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So how can people stay in touch, learn more about your resources, get connected to you?
Yeah, so feel free to give us a call. Our main number is 407-796-1582. You can visit our website, www.northstarsa.com. And on our website, there's ways you can contact us. Also, there's a really excellent video gallery. We've taken a lot of time to interview different companies, different services that can help benefit folks. And we also do a pretty good job in explaining kind of everything we've talked about here in more depth. So it's a great way for folks to just sit and just empower themselves with education through the gallery as well.
Yeah, that's excellent. Well, there you have it. You've got a great organization right here in Central Florida to help get you placed and provide you with great care management. North Star Senior Advisors, North Star Cares. Thank you again, Ignacio, for coming and talking to us today. It's been great.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it.